I'm gonna get started. So thank you for everyone for making it out to GBM number 3. Today we have guest speaker is Kelley, Becherer. So if you still haven't filled out the spring membership form, you still haven't filled out the spring membership form, here it is. For everyone in FBTO that came, we're Aztec Adaptive Sports. We're an organization here on campus that are committed to expanding and promoting the adaptive sports movement here on campus. So we bring in a lot of guest speakers who work in the adaptive sports field, like physical therapists, occupational therapists, trainers, coaches, hear about their stories. We do a lot of volunteer work with the adaptive athletics program here on campus and in the community, and do a lot to promote and spread awareness about adaptive sports. So if you're interested in anything like that, gaining some unique experiences and joining this incredible movement, then we'd love to have you in our organization. Points in the mission form, so if you guys want to get points for being at the GBM, it's 2 points for being at the GBM. I'll also post these at the end. Points and dues, if you haven't paid dues yet, you can scan the QR code. You have to pay dues to become an active member, so make sure you're doing that if you filled out the membership form. And once again, the point breakdown, so attending GBM is 2 points, socials 1, service events 3, recruitment half, promotion half, and then other like volunteer opportunities that you share with the club, you can get half a point for those as well. And then some updates on our past event last Friday and Saturday. So we had the SDSU Wheelchair Tennis Invitational. Thank you for everyone who showed up and represented and supported our adapted athletes. We had a really great showing for the game on Friday against the University of Arizona. There was over 100 people watching, actually. If you can see the presidents there in attendance watching, and it went to a tiebreaker and we won. So it was a really cool experience, a lot of support for our athletes, which they really appreciated, and hopefully continuing strong throughout their season. So thank you for everyone who came, volunteered, and just supported the athletes. All right, our big event coming up next Friday. This is our biggest event of the year, the Adaptive Sports Showcase. It's going to be next Friday, March 6th from 3 to 5 p.m. and it's going to be in the ARC on the courts 2 and 4. So this event's going to have two main portions. So first, we're going to start off with a Paralympian panel. So we've invited 4 Paralympians, and then one of our SDSU adapted athletes is going to be representing the organization. They're going to be talking about themes such as representation and accessibility in the future in adaptive sports. So really cool opportunity to hear from people competing at the highest level in adaptive sports. And then after that, we're going to have a wheelchair basketball exhibition. The University of Michigan and Eastern Washington University's wheelchair basketball teams are going to have a very high level exhibition and show the elite level of adaptive sports at the college level. And then some fun things. We're going to have Broken Yoke provided for free, so we have them catering food. They're going to bring some breakfast burritos, some chicken wraps, so free lunch, and then free swag. We're going to be giving out some stress balls, wristbands, stickers, all types of stuff. There's going to be a DJ, so it's going to be a really cool event from 3 to 5 next Friday. So it's open to everyone, so we'd love to see you guys there. All right, and then if anyone is interested in volunteering, we could use some help setting up, breaking down, and just transitioning during the event. So if you want to help out, there's a QR code there. If you're available at any time, you don't have to commit to a certain amount of hours. Just if you're available for any period of time, we really appreciate your help. We'll also post this on the calendar later. All right, please welcome Dr. Kelley Becherer. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. How do I switch this over?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, you're probably faster. I didn't need it. Is there sound on it? Okay, we'll find out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Alright, hi everyone. Like I said, my name's Kelley. I was asked to come today kind of just talk to you guys about my story going from like Paralympic swimmer to my current career in physical therapy. I put together a presentation, have a little talk, but if there's anything you guys want to hear or questions, like just feel free to ask questions along the way or at the end. My disclosure is that I am visually impaired, so if you raise your hand and I'm not calling on you, I'm not ignoring you. Just shout out whatever you want to know. Okay. Alright, cool. So I was going to start a little video. We're gonna see if there's sound or not. And there's not. Okay.
There's a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll just we don't know how to figure that out, right?
I could try. Try this. Control panel. No.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll go to the next one.
Alright.
That was a video my college put together, just kind of explaining everything. But we'll just jump into a little bit about me. So I was born in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and I was born with a congenital visual impairment. So I have what's called bilateral coloboma and microphthalmia, which is a lot of words for just means that I basically have like 20/500 vision. Do you guys know like kind of what that means at all? Just to kind of break it down easily, if you have 20/20 vision, which is considered like normal, and I have 20/500, if you're standing 500 feet away from something and I'm standing 20 feet, we're seeing it like kind of similarly. But I also don't have peripheral vision, and then I have some like holes in my vision basically. But I was born that way, so I don't know any different. So every time someone asks, like, what is it like? Like, what do you see? I'm like, I don't know. What do you see? Like, how hard is that to explain, right? Like, you've never thought about it. But that being said, my parents never let me like hold back anything. Anything I wanted to do, they were like full force. You can do whatever you want. I have an older brother who's just like a year older than me. So as a kid, everything that he did is what I wanted to do. So he joined swimming at age 6. So at 5, I was like, well, if he's swimming, I'm swimming. My parents told me that I was too young to join the swim team. And I went to a swim meet with my brother and found out that there was 5-year-olds in the pool. And I was so mad. The famous story is that I stood in the corner of the gym for 3 hours until my mom would take me to the pool the next week and sign me up for a swim team. So I joined. I sucked. I was so bad at first. But I loved it. I had a passion for it. I loved being in the water. And I think a big part of that was because I felt normal when I was in the water. Like growing up early, I had early intervention, which is like 0 to 3. I had speech therapy, I had physical therapy, I had occupational therapy. And a lot of that was just because of little things you wouldn't think about. So when you're visually impaired and you're learning to speak, I couldn't see people like enunciate their words with their mouth. So I was having really poor enunciation, so I went to speech therapy. And then my left eye is a lot worse than my right. I can see out of both, but my left is worse. So I was holding my left side like super tight to my body, and I wasn't using it as a baby. So I had to go to PT and OT and learn how to like just use my left side of my body equally to my right. But when I got in the pool, like none of that mattered. Like I didn't need any adaptive equipment to swim for my disability, which was awesome. And then I also got to put on goggles, which meant no one could see my eyes, which was like the best thing as a kid because I didn't want to be different. That was my biggest fear as a little kid. I didn't want to be different than anyone else. I just wanted to like be the same. So the goggles and just not needing anything like really kept me going in the sport, and then I loved it. But I still, again, I wasn't good, and part of that was that I was missing certain coaching. So the things that I wasn't getting was that if a coach explained something at the side of a pool that like I couldn't see necessarily what they were exactly telling me to do, so I was missing some of those aspects. So at age like 11, my parents found a visually impaired sports camp that was happening just an hour south of my house. We went down there, and it was like a whole new world. So I was, for the first time in my life, like around people who also lived in that same like visually impaired world. So not only did I learn different techniques for sports, like we did all different sports, but in the pool learning, okay, this is how to control your head, because I was moving my head all over the place because I couldn't focus on one thing in the pool, so moving my head, which makes you do a lot slower if you don't know swimming. But also like how to count your strokes before you flip on the wall, because I couldn't see the wall super well, to how to use my phone to magnify to look at a menu in a restaurant, because I'd never been able to do that. Like things that, again, you just don't think about because you've never had to, or you're just doing whatever works for you at the time, but then someone shows you a better way to do it. So it kind of like opened my eyes a little bit, for lack of a better term. So 2 years later, after doing that, I got a lot better at swimming, and I actually made my first Paralympics at age 13. I went to Athens in 2004 and competed. I was in the S13 classifications. Do you no classifications for Paralympics at all. A little bit, not really. So S stands for swimming. So every sport has like a different classification system, which makes it very confusing. But with swimming, it's just S1 through S10 is physical impairments, S1 being like the most physically impaired, and then S11 through S13 is like visual. So S13 is the least visually impaired, with S11 being like completely blind. So I was on S13. And then I continued after Athens to compete in 2 more Paralympic Games. I went to Beijing as a senior in high school in 2008, and then I went to London during college in 2012. Like they said, I have a total of 7 medals, 3 of them gold and 4 bronze. And I actually still hold the S13 100 freestyle American record to this day. It's like 15 years old now, so I'm sure it's gonna get broken real soon. Yeah, so that's kind of like my little background in swimming. I do have one more video. I don't think this one necessarily needs sound, so we're gonna watch some of it. I'm gonna fast forward a bunch, but let's try this. Okay, so they're just like announcing the names or whatever. This is my 100 freestyle from London. And I'm in like the top yellow lane. It's a little weird with that sound, sorry. Any questions so far? I'm also like, I kind of just came in just covering my story, so if you guys have some big questions, I'm getting the PT, but if you have questions, just feel free. So a couple of things, you'll notice I was the one who didn't go down right away at the start. So one of the other girls in this race was visually impaired and hearing impaired. And hearing impaired isn't a Paralympic classification, but it is still a disability. So they accommodated her, and they made it so you like really couldn't go down as fast. I kept getting disqualified because I kept false starting because they would like take their time. They'd be like, take your mark, flash the light for her, and then tell us to go. So I basically accommodated her disability by being the last one to go down on the block so that they had to accommodate me instead of her, and it worked really well. So me and Canada right there in the middle. So I also can't see my competitors when I compete. So I could kind of sense that someone was right there, but like I couldn't tell for sure that she's right there because I have no peripheral vision. So I'm really just racing the clock here. And then at the end, I have no idea that I won because I can't tell. So in swimming, they have like that big board that shows you like who won, who got second. In London, it was really cool because it was the first time they had these blocks where they had like lights on the side of the block that would have 1 light for first, 2 for second, 3 for third. After that, there was no lights. I guess they didn't care unless you medaled. And I like pulled myself up to see how many lights were on my block, and then I like went down. She got third, another USA girl. So the biggest thing with competition were not seeing the competitors, working on the start, but then the turns were really hard for me too, because seeing the wall can be a challenge, especially with different lighting. So every pool is different lighting and different like coloring and everything. So when I swam in Beijing, I actually almost missed a wall completely because I couldn't really like see it very well. And if you miss the wall completely, you get disqualified. Like that's it. But I hit it kind of, but not enough to like push off. And I actually went from being in first place going to the turn to getting a third in that race. And I really learned my lesson that I needed to practice more in the competition pool before I competed so that I could get used to the lights. And I wasn't mad about missing the wall because that's why I was in the Paralympics and I couldn't see. So I wasn't like, they should redo it, or I was upset at myself, but I was just like, okay, next time I'll do better. And that's kind of always been my philosophy with kind of everything in my vision. It's like, okay, I lived and I learned, and next time we'll figure it out better. All right, so transitioning to physical therapy. So when we traveled in Paralympics, we brought physical therapists with us on every single meet that was international. Whether that was the games or worlds or any kind of meet in between those 4 years. And I just thought their job was so cool. they helped us with recovery, they helped us maintain our peak performance so that we could train at our best and do what we loved, right? They were always really cool people. And so I really thought their career was maybe a good path for me. And I ended up going to Northeastern University. At the time, they had a 6-year doctorate program. So normally with, most of you probably know, but some of you with PT, you do 4 years undergrad and then you reapply for grad school and then you do 3 years of grad school. So the 6 years is limited to having to reapply. It was just in PT school, straight from undergrad through. Graduated in 6 years. I also swam while I was at Northeastern University. Swimming and doing PT school was a little challenging. I don't know if it was ignorance or overconfidence, but I never really thought about the fact of being a physical therapist maybe would have been a problem. It never even crossed my mind, to be honest with you, which sounds really silly. But a couple of my professors did have that concern. So during a couple of classes, my professors told me, between your swimming schedule that you have and your visual impairment, we do not know if you're going to pass on class. We don't think this is a good idea. So instead of getting upset, I just decided that I would be the best in their class, and I was like straight A all the way through. I was stubborn. Let's put it that way. I was really stubborn. So graduated, and then I ended up in San Diego, and I work at UCSD currently. I did one of my clinical rotations out here. So the last year of the way my program was set up was that they were all clinical rotations. I did one back home in Wisconsin, and then I did one out here in San Diego, and then I did one back in Boston where I was in school at Mass General. The place out here hired me right when I graduated, and I love San Diego, who doesn't? So decided to take that job, and then about 2 years in, I got the job at UCSD, and for the last 3 years, I've actually been the lead physical therapist over there. I work at the La Jolla campus, and I work in the outpatient setting, and we really do everything. We see anyone from 15 to 100 plus, but we are more the sports specific clinic. And so I work with a lot of swimmers, and then I've also got to work with several professional athletes, so it's been a really cool experience. A couple ways that I accommodate while I am a physical therapist is, the biggest one I can think of is when we look at gait analysis. So gait is like how someone walks. And when someone would have someone do gait analysis, you'd have them like walk across the room and back like pretty far. But if they get far enough away from me, I'm not going to be able to properly analyze their walking. So I'll do a couple things. I'll just have them either walk in a shorter distance, or I'll walk with them as they go to analyze their walking, which has always worked really well for me. I need to zoom in on my computer. I can't really see like small text very well, so I just use a zoom feature that's built into every computer these days. And then those are kind of my big accommodations. Like I don't need extra time, I don't do different documentation, but I really think sports and also Paralympics kind of helped me to succeed in physical therapy. I never really thought about it too hard until I kind of really got into the career. A lot of what we do as physical therapists is someone comes to you with something that's not going right, like it's an impairment. We actually sometimes even call it like a disability, which sometimes blows my mind that we use that terminology. But someone's coming to you and they're not able to do what they love because they're in pain or just not functionally able to do it. And so you have to be creative and figure out ways that someone's either going to get better, or if they're not, because unfortunately sometimes it's true that this is their new normal. How do we get them to do what they love to do still? And that's the bread and butter of Paralympics. You're watching from all different aspects of different disabilities, figure out how to do something, and maybe it looks a little different than it would normally, but it's still something they can participate in and do and succeed. And so that creativity, I think, really was able to carry over into physical therapy. I also never like to tell someone no, they're never going to do something. Because again, maybe it won't look exactly the same as it used to, but the chances of us being able to get back to some level of something they love to do is really high. It's not always the case, but a lot of the times it is. And then there's certain populations that I feel like in particular, I have a little bit more background than a lot of my coworkers. Patients with amputations. I know several people even just in San Diego who when I do treat this patient population, I've been able to reach out to like, hey, I have this patient, they need this orthotic, who's the best person you know for that, or getting them hooked up with the Challenge Athlete Foundation, which is the huge disability foundation in San Diego that does a lot of, you know, sport activities throughout the year. Even elderly patients who are going through losing their vision for the first time. I mean, I navigate the world like that all the time, so sometimes it's a matter of, well, you've been falling on the last step, do you know how many steps there are in your house? You'd be surprised when people say, everyone says no, why would I know how many steps there are in my house? I'm like, well, count them, then you'll never miss the last one again. And it can be as simple as that, where I know that I count every stair before I take it if it's in somewhere that I'm going all the time. Or using your foot to kind of navigate where that edge of the curve is so you're not falling down it. And then, like I said, I do treat a lot of summer as well. I'm at UCSD as well. Okay, so then kind of full circle. So actually last year, or no gosh, 2 years ago now, I was able to apply for and then be part of the sports med team that helped the Team USA compete in Paris 2024 during the Paralympics. So you have to apply. I applied for the residency program. They select people, and then you go and do a 2-week kind of like volunteer residency at one of the training centers. So I was out in Colorado Springs. Before there, you just treat in a physical therapy clinic, just like any physical therapy clinic. It just happens to be Team USA athletes that are coming through. And then I have no idea how they select people to go to the games from there, but I was selected to go as a physical therapist in the village. They have physical therapists and athletic trainers who go out with every team as well. But then there's a staff that's just in the village, and I was actually the only non-US OPC, so United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee physical therapist who was selected in the village. We had athletic trainers, we had chiropractors, we had athletic sports med, acupuncture, so there was a big group of interdisciplinary people who came and helped support Team USA. Did some sideline care, you guys did in the third picture. And then I actually got to go to the opening ceremonies too to cover as sports med. And then the middle picture, just our recovery station in the clinic in the village. We used the compression, it's called Normatec, the compression to help the athletes. We had the TV going on. We had like a bunch of different just like icing machines, game readies, and that was a kind of a recovery area for the athletes. That is my story in a nutshell. I kind of went through it a little fast, but do you guys have any questions or anything to do with physical therapy or Paralympics that you are interested in?
I'm wondering, I know you said, which I feel like speaks to you as like a competitor and just like your mindset in general about taking kind of like, oh, I missed that ball because of this, and you're like, okay, what can I do? Is there anything you would like to see at the Paralympics that maybe just kind of, it's more inclusive to, oh, I have a visual impairment, person next to me has visual and hearing, like, is there a way that you could truly level that?
Yeah, I mean, because hearing isn't considered like a Paralympic disability, because it wouldn't impact the sport enough. So that's kind of the thing with Paralympics, is that not every single disability would count to be classified in the Paralympics, whether it's because it wouldn't impair you enough for the sport to be considered like an uneven playing field if you're competing against able-bodied, or if it's an unstable enough disability, meaning that someone's progressively getting better, let's say, or it's just like kind of like up and down a lot. It's hard to classify someone if one day they're only 10% impaired and the next day they're 90% impaired, right? So those are the limitations that the Paralympics has a little bit. I honestly think, to be frank with you, I think the Paralympics did a really good job accommodating her. They never used a strobe light or anything like before that, and they had one for her under her block every single time we competed. So they went out of their way to do that. So I guess I don't know if there was anything else that they could do for her. I think missing the wall for me, the Paralympics also, so I don't know, this is a long time ago, but Athens in 2004, the Olympics swam outside, like their pool was the outdoor pool, and the Paralympics actually, we swam inside because of the visually impaired classification, because there's so much different lighting that comes with outside, and it's just so hard for the eye to see when you swim outside that they switched it to the indoor pool. So that's like something that they do differently. Nowadays they pretty much have all the Olympic and Paralympic pools inside. I haven't seen one outside in the last since 2004, but that's something that they do. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
How was your experience like growing up and training? Was there like special accommodation? Sorry. Was there special accommodations or coaches or anything you had, or was it a lot of training and teaching yourself?
Yeah, no. So my accommodations for like every day was pretty much the clock. So in swimming, you go off a clock for everything, and I couldn't see the clock on the edge of the pool. So my parents actually bought me my own personal clock to go on the side of my lane, and I brought it with me to everybody. I just kept it at the pool. I had it right there, and my friends in my lane loved it because they were like, "Oh my god, I wear glasses and I couldn't see that clock either," or whatever. So then in college, the same thing. Northeastern bought me a clock to go on each side of my lane so that I could just have it right there. And then as far as coaching, my mom actually got into coaching when I was like doing all of this. She kind of swam as a kid and then just was, I don't drive. So my mom had to drive me to every single swim practice that I had, meaning that she just sat there all the time. And I'm sure she got bored, so she started watching practices and be really into, and she became like the best coach. So she actually was one of my coaches in high school and like in club, kind of like when I was a teenager, which made it easy, right? Because she obviously like knew me and knew my visual impairment. But my other coaches were always really good about it. I mean, I couldn't see the board where they write the workouts, so I had to like stand up and look at it, and I have to memorize a lot of things in my life because I can't see them. So I would look at it and memorize the set for the whole practice and then get in and then go. And then they were always really good about being like, "Oh, Kelley, like you need to fix your arm. Come out of the pool. Let's do it together, and then go back in and we'll see if you can like reproduce it." And then Paralympic coaches are trained for disability, and I think as years have gone on, it's better. But a lot of them, they come with levels of certain disabilities, and not a lot of visual impairment was like the focus of a lot of the coaches. So I actually did teach them quite a bit of like how to make sure that they're telling me my time, that they're not just saying like this, or not just saying, "Oh, let's go over there," or let's you need to do this with your arms. Those kind of non-descriptive words don't help me at all. So teaching coaches just simple things like that was helpful. That was really the big things. And like I said in the very beginning, the nice thing about swimming for me was that I didn't need a lot of accommodations. It was that I had to practice my training so that I knew how to work in that pool, and then a couple things like the clocks and seeing the set and the coaching. That was kind of it, which was nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, like, how many of you guys are like physical therapy versus the adaptive sport? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Are you guys all wanting to go in like sports physical therapy or all around the board? All on the board. Okay, that was my question. Curiosity.
You said your first Olympics was when you were 13. How was that experience going to the Olympics? So
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that we got sat down by the head of swimming at the time, who, as a parent, was the head of Paralympics, and she told us and our parents that this is an elite sport, and because there was a lot of young kids at that game for some reason, and she said if your kids can't handle the fact that this is an elite event, they shouldn't come. And my mom was just like, okay. So then that summer, my parents actually, so I grew up in like kind of small town Wisconsin, but it was like 3 hours from Chicago. So my parents took me to Chicago, and they took me and my brother, and they made me like navigate the whole city. And my brother was like, "But I can get a cab." And mom was like, "Shut up, Josh. Like, no one wants to hear from you right now." And so my parents like trained me to be independent from a really young age, and like have to use public transportation and have to figure that out on my own. So then I flew. We all met up in DC before we flew to Athens. So I flew to DC by myself, and then you are part of the team, and then just the stage that it was, like how big it was. I wasn't prepared at all as a 13-year-old for what I was getting into. I kind of knew what the Paralympics were, But even at trials when I made the team, I didn't know I was making the team. I made it on what's called like a wild card, which means I won my event at trials that was automatically gonna send me to the games. Which doesn't happen anymore, that's not even a thing anymore. So they came up to me and they were like, oh, you made Athens, like what do you want to swim in Athens? And I think my response was, where is Athens? But once there, I loved it. I mean, I learned so much. I learned even just like how to be in a ready room. Like they stage you in this room with all your competitors, and as a 13-year-old, it was so intimidating. Like all the other competitors are, like, they're all veterans. They know what they're doing. They know what they want to do. I literally stood in the very corner of the ready room with my headphones on, just staring at everyone with no one look at me, no one look at me. But that being said, like swimming is swimming. So I got on the pool and I was like, well, this is what I love. This is what I know how to do. So that part of it, I think, was like my kind of like grounding part. And then I made some of the best friends that I've ever had in that games, and I still talk to them to this day. Like one of them was just in LA and we hung out. She's a genetic counselor now. Like it's just cool to see those friendships that came all the way from like Athens, of us all kind of being like scared little kids who didn't know what we were doing, to going to multiple games, having multiple medals, and then also succeeding in our careers. Trying to think what else it was like. It was just, you're staying in a village, like you're staying in the exact same village as the Olympians, right? So it's Paralympics means parallel to. So it's parallel to the Olympics. So you're just really engulfed in that world, and they're treating you as you are an elite athlete at that young age. So that's, I think, where a lot of that confidence came from too, of okay, yeah, like I want to do more in the sport. I want to have that golden moment.
What made you decide that you wanted to go back and be a physical therapist for the Paralympics?
That's what inspired me to be PT in the first place. So I think even from like day one of applying to PT school, I knew my ultimate goal was to somehow give back to the Olympic and Paralympic movement, and I wasn't exactly sure like what that would look like. But you have to be a PT for so long before you apply. And I think like the moment I could apply, I went online and applied, and I honestly didn't know like how they accepted people. But I think pretty much like if you're really interested in going and doing a 2-week residency, like you can make it happen as long as you have I think it's 5 years of your career behind you. And that was the world I grew up in. Like I said, I was 13 till I retired at age 25. So like I grew up in that world. I knew that I loved it, and I knew I had some connections in it still. So I think that was probably one of my proudest moments. Like between all my medals and all my career stuff, like being able to go back and actually treat the same like environment that I had loved so much was just so rewarding, honestly. And this guy actually, we swam together in Beijing, and he was a swimmer in Beijing, and he came back as a triathlete in Paris. So that was kind of cool to see that. The girl on the other side, we swam together our whole lives. Like I was in her wedding, and I got to like treat her on the sidelines in Paris. So I think it was just one of those things where like, this is why I wanted to get into it, so this is what I want to do. I don't know if I'll ever do it again. Not because it wasn't amazing, but just because I do a full-time job, and it's when you are in a full-time job, like you only have so many days off in your whole, year. And so I had to do, a whole month was taken between doing the 2-week residency and then like 2.5 weeks going to Paris. Plus I don't know if they take me again, so we'll see. But that's kind of why.
What was like the biggest difference in like exercises that you saw at like the Paralympics versus treating here?
That's a really good question. It actually kind of blew my mind how many of the Paralympic athletes like weren't getting what I would consider like really good physical therapy at home. So many amputees who therapists were just ignoring their amputated side because they didn't know what to do with it. I treated one, I think she was a fencer, who was bilateral amputee in the legs, and and below the knee, so she had her whole femur all the way through her knee socket, and they hadn't done any hip stretching on her ever, because they were like afraid. She was like, I think they're afraid to touch my legs, but this is like my back. It was her back that was hurting her, so you had to look at the hips too. And when I stretched out her hips and did some very basic like hip flexor exercises, even some just like knee to chest, her back pain resolved that day. So honestly, it wasn't that there was different exercises as much as sometimes the basics work for everyone. And that's something that I feel like was more the takeaway than I had to be really creative. Because sometimes people just, if they don't know it, they're afraid of it, and then they don't treat it. I'm trying to think what else. That was like the one that really stood out, that I remember being like, this is a moment that I'm not gonna forget, that's so simple. Other things was, and this goes to the visually impaired and blind classifications, like just being able to explain exercises to them and really having to like use tactile cueing. And again, they were the same basic exercises, but the patient had no idea how to do them because they had never like been really taken the time to and explained in certain ways. I don't remember there being like drastically different exercises though. And the golden rule when it comes to treating at any competition is don't change what they're doing. If someone's doing something and it got them to the point where they're in the Paralympics or they're in the Olympics, keep doing it. You're not changing it during competition, even if you think it's drastically wrong. And you wouldn't tell them that because it's all a mental game, right? So if they're doing something and you're like, why? You're like, that is awesome. I want you to keep doing it, have a great competition, and maybe afterwards you talk to them after they win. And then you're like, okay, let's talk about how we make you better next time. And that's kind of like, honestly, that sounds really simple too, but that is super big when you're in the games. We are there to help them enhance what they've already been doing. So a lot of what we were doing wasn't this big, crazy technology stuff. It was, all right, how do we keep doing what you're doing? You're doing these exercises, okay, let's do them together. You normally get some sort of recovery hands-on treatment. I feel like there were some days where I was a glorified masseuse sometimes, where it was just like, oh, we need to do some soft tissue on certain muscle groups. Okay, let's do that. And you had to really have like good manual skills because the athletes come in and they're like, I've already done a gym workout today, and I've done my practice, and I've worked on my rehab exercises from home. I need a recovery day. And so they'd come in for the recovery, and they could just sign up whenever they wanted with any of us. So that's kind of how that worked. There was like an app, and they would just sign up with whoever they wanted to see, whether it was PT, chiro, acupuncture, or athletic training, and they would go on our schedule. Yeah. I'll show you my cute nephew. He's 6. I got him the Paralympic shirt from Paris, and he was very proud. His principal now is a Paralympic basketball player from London, randomly enough, in like a small, tiny town in Wisconsin. So he's a very proud fan.
So random, but do you know what the mascot is on the shirt?
It's supposed to be a hat. There's a lot of talk around the village about that one. Yeah, it's supposed to be like the Paris, like famous like revolutionary hats from back in the day. You guys can make your own conclusions on that.
Did you get a lot of downtime or any time to like explore Paris? Because I know you're probably working a lot.
Yes, good question too. We were working 12-hour days, if not 13-hour days, every single day we were there, except for 2. We got 2 half days. So we were there for like 2.5 weeks, and you're there to work. So for the 2 half days, you get an afternoon off and a morning off. On the afternoon off, I went and explored the city. The bad thing is that there's only one person off at a time, so like you couldn't go out with friends and explore the city. But I went out and kind of did my thing, and then one of the other athletic trainers, we either worked an early shift or an evening shift, and normally it was like 6 to 6 or 7, or it was like 10 to 10 or 11 p.m. So we try to be open as long as possible, especially because some athletes were coming back from competition at like 10 or 11 at night and might need some recovery stuff, or even just like us to be open, not necessarily hands-on stuff, but like they needed the ice or whatever. So if that was the case, we just stayed open as long as we needed them to. But if you had the early shift, then you could go do whatever you wanted in the evening. And so me and one of the other athletic trainers like went on a boat cruise, and we did the whole dinner thing. And then when I had the morning off, I stayed in the village, but I just explored the village. There was like so many cool things in the village. There was you could send postcards home. They had like really cool coffee maker things that had like the Paralympic symbol on that they like made in the lattes. They had a tattoo parlor, which I did not participate, but I did have one. And then it was really cool because some of the people that I swam against from other countries back in like 2012 were actually there coaching or doing other things to support staff. So I got to catch up with some old like Australian friends or Canadian friends too. But yeah, you're working a lot of the time, and a lot of it's you're working, but you're just sitting there. Because you're waiting for people to come in. So there's busy times and there's slow times. Once competition started, kind of midday was a slow time, or like mid-morning and mid-afternoon because everyone was out competing. But then middle of the day, they'd all come back and they want the ice baths ready. So we had to like clean the ice baths and get them cold enough and then make sure everything was set. And if it was slow, you just had to stay there and be available. And then we all kind of just rotated getting lunch like in the cafeteria. They had free everything, but they had really good coffee in Paris. And then they had these famous chocolate chip muffins that were just like homemade bread, just so good. And then we literally played video games part of the time. If everyone was in competition, we had this like old school little TV that had this, I don't know, 1980s video game it felt like on it. But a lot of it was that, and then we all were on call like 2 nights of the game. So you took like you guys know what an AED is? Yeah, you took like the AED home and like the emergency kit, and if anything happened at night, like you had to answer, which as a PT was a little scary because we don't do as much sideline care as like an athletic trainer. Thank God no one was called during my nights, but I mean I went through the kit and I felt confident, and I like talked to one athletic trainer just to make sure I was like, okay, I know 100% what I'm doing. But my regular job, like I'm not on call like that, right? So got me out of my comfort zone a little bit, but everything's good.
Was there anyone you looked up to when you were just like starting out young, or was it kind of just I'm focused on me and getting better?
Well, no, I had people.
Okay.
Like people that I knew or like people that I didn't know. This swimmer named Natalie Coughlin was like my absolute favorite. She was a backstroker and just like crushing it back when I was little. She has a winery and a cookbook now. I'm trying to figure out how to join the wine club. But I have a cookbook. Yeah, she was like my inspiration. I had her poster, and it was like this swimming poster, very intense. And I wrote along the edge, there was a whiteboard, and I wrote every competition that I was ever at, and I posted it in my room in every competition. And I made me and my roommate at the time always like tap the poster for good luck before we left. And it was my theory that every time we forgot to tap the poster, neither of us would medal. But every time we tapped the poster, we both medaled. So it was kind of our good luck charm. And then there was people in the Paralympics. So there was a lady named Jen Butcher who was kind of like just before my time, who was one of the people at that sports camp that I was at when I was younger, who taught me like how to really first move in the water properly with a visual impairment. And I really looked up to her because not only was she doing awesome in the pool, but she had a life outside. And I think that was one of always my fears, like just because I don't drive, like how do I navigate having a career and having this? And she was doing it all, and had kids and did all this stuff. And I was like, okay, so like I can do that too. And so that was an inspiration both in the pool and out. And then there was a girl in my hometown who I was very impressed with, and she was just a really, really good swimmer. And she was probably like 5 years older than me, and I just thought she was the coolest thing ever. And she swam the 100 free, so I wanted to swim the 100 free. So yeah, I had those people. And then my mom always was like a good supporter. I'm sure everyone has like their role models, right, that they look up to.
I'm curious how the experience was different going to the Paralympics as obviously like competing as an athlete versus being like a physical therapist. Or did you kind of notice that there was a lot more resources that you didn't really know about as an athlete when you were younger, or just like how you saw it differently in the different roles?
Yeah, I think honestly there are just more resources now. First of all, like nutrition is so much bigger now than it was when I was younger. We had a nutritionist, they told us kind of what to do, but nowadays like every team has a nutritionist, and there's a nutrition clinic that they set up that has protein smoothies, and quick go bars, and we didn't have any of that. There is way more sports psych that travels with the team now, which was really cool. There was 2 main girls, and they were exhausted by the end of the games because they did so much. They stayed in the village most of the time, but then they also, when they knew there was going to be maybe a bad loss one day, which sounds bad, but if they kind of knew ahead of time, like this might be someone's hard day, we're going to go to that competition, and they would be there on site with them. I mean, I think when I was initially starting out, I was so young that I was a little oblivious to all the resources. I was just kind of taking it all in and was like, okay, I need to go from the pool to the cafeteria to my bed, and how do I do that? But then as I got older, I started using the physical therapist more. I would go in the training rooms more, so you were a little more aware, but there just wasn't as much. I'm trying to think what other resources there were. The sports med was a huge one that they really emphasized in Paris, which makes sense, right? And nutrition was a huge one. And then every team had athletic trainers or PT with them at all times. The higher risk teams also traveled with a sports med doctor. So you're looking at like rugby, probably hockey in the Winter Olympics. And then we had one on site. Also there's a hospital in the village. So USA brings all these people. Not every country can afford to do that. So there's a hospital that the Olympics or Paralympics supplies that has just like international dentists, international imaging. And by international, they bring in from all these different countries just to cover the games. They had PT in there. They had a recovery unit in there. And apparently, I learned this, they had that at every game that I was at. I had no idea this hospital existed, which I guess is a good thing. But they have even just like bicycles to use for recovery if you wanted them. They had massages you could sign up for. You could go get a dermatology tech. So not only did they have things that if you got injured, but they had things that maybe some countries don't even have access to until you get to the games. You could go get your teeth cleaned if you wanted. None of the US athletes really participated in that because we are also fortunate enough that we have that stuff when we're home. But if you don't, like, it was a really cool benefit of just making the games, right? So I didn't know that existed. I think the biggest thing, this is gonna sound kind of funny, being an athlete, I was going from the pool to the village, from the pool to the village. We didn't get to see much else. I got so much freedom as a staff member. I felt so awkward. I was like, I'm gonna go outside the village today. They're like, yeah, no one cares. Like, no. So we could like go out to dinner and stuff, which was fun to actually get to explore Paris a little bit, like in the nighttime if we had time. So that was kind of funny, especially because the lady in charge of the Paralympics when I was in Paris was the one who had told me that if I wasn't old enough to handle sports, then I shouldn't be there. And so I kept being like, Julie, is it okay? She's like, Kelley, I don't care. Like, go do what you want. As long as you show up for your shift, you're good. So that was kind of a funny little difference.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I did bring my medals. If anyone does want to see them afterwards, I have them. So just let me know.